During the Republican debates, Congressman Ron Paul called for an end to the income tax, and he said he would replace it with nothing. I'm wondering if you agree with that as your tax policy, and if you would explain what your tax policy would be if you were president. We're going to begin with Mr. Wright.
Tax policy. Well, my tax policy would be stop it everywhere we can. Of course, now this is another touchy area for the president, and I know Sharon's not trying to fool us, but they do get these kind of questions. And then the guy who's running for president answers it like he can do something about it. Well, the president can't do anything about your taxes. He can't lower them. He can't raise them. He can't cut them. He can't do away with them. That's what Congress is for, unfortunately. But what a president can do is hold Congress responsible for their spending and for how they use the money that they steal from us by some tax or whatever. This whole concept that somehow this a magic tax is going to help us in our economy and whatnot doesn't work that way. You're removing wealth from the people who are the economy. When you tax something, we need tax breaks, and we need to slash the spending, stop the spending that we're doing. That would be my tax policy.
Mr. Steele.
It's interesting. Did you know that at the start of the 1900s that the U.S. government was funded 90% by just two types of taxes? That's tariffs and excise taxes. Of course, an excise tax would be what we are talking about, a consumption tax today. I haven't seen this figure from Dr. Paul that he can completely eliminate the income tax unless he's talking about completely replacing it with a consumption tax. And, of course, that's what I do.
Mr. Harris.
You know, I didn't think I'd see the moment come when I had something to disagree with Mr. Wright's on, but it has arrived. Sorry, Lee. I do think that the president can stop the income tax, and I think the president can do it by refusing to collect it. The president does not have to make himself party to slavery upon we the people, because that's what it is. When the government comes and takes your personal labor, okay, they're saying that they own you and they can take that labor away from you. And that's the very definition of slavery. And the president, under Article 2 of the Constitution, does not have to make himself party to that. He could say that I'm not going to collect the personal income tax, so Congress, you need to give me something that's constitutional and that does not promulgate slavery. And as president, that's exactly what I will do.
Mr. Pearson.
The first step is to simplify the code and get rid of all the billions, hundreds of billions of dollars of giveaway that are contained in the code. Simplify it. Reduce the costs of government so that the money that's needed is less. You've got to actually change things, I think, with campaign financing reform. Just allow candidates who run for office to have free franking privilege postage and access to the broadcast media. And if we allow that, we won't need to raise money, and we will have reform because we will have reformed people being voted into office. I think that's our solution.
Mr. Johnson.
As governor of New Mexico, not one penny of tax went up over 8 years. Not 1 cent. That had never happened before. And that included a cigarette tax, but I made a promise that not 1 penny of tax would be increased. The key here is to slash spending, something that has never happened before. I'm promising to submit a balanced budget to Congress, a $1.4 trillion reduction in federal spending. I also promise to advocate on the part of, really, what I'm supporting is a consumption tax. I think it's fair. It's revenue neutral. I'm embracing the fair tax because I think they have millions of followers, and for all of the problems associated with a consumption tax, they've addressed those issues. It would be terrific if we got to be able to debate the merits of a fair tax. But ideally, there is no tax. I just think if you implement one federal tax, doing away with the income tax, corporate tax, tax withholding, the IRS, that goes down the road a long way to identifying one federal tax that if it gets raised, we become outraged. The pressure is going to be to reduce it.
And Mr. Keller.
This is one of my favorite topics. I say get rid of taxes altogether. I believe that we can do it. We absolutely can do it. If we follow what Bill was saying earlier about getting the monetary policy right, getting rid of the Federal Reserve, getting the bankers out of the system, getting the distribution of new cash right, and getting that out of the hands of the bankers, then we can address what taxes really are, as I said earlier, theft, which is if the Congress is doing its job and creating the money, regulating it, of course, making sure there's not too much because we don't want inflation, that kind of thing. But if the government is doing what the Constitution says for it to do, then it won't need taxation to fund its operations. And then if we bring into play what these other guys were saying about reducing the spending out of the federal government and down to the local level, then the whole problem is resolved. No taxes.